Sorry, there was a little problem with the recording. So we were discussing a loan is generally not an income. But as I told you, there are deeming fictions in the Income Tax Act. A deeming fiction presumes something which may not be in existence. It presumes an income when an income may not exist. For example, in section 56. Example in section 68. 56 is a part of your syllabus, 68 is not. 68 says that when you receive an amount, you should be able to establish three things: identity, genuineness, creditworthiness. You should be able to establish the person, identity of the person who has given the amount to you. Mr. A, Mr. B, produce the details of identifying this person. Second, it should be a genuine transaction. Receipt by check is one of the proofs of establishing the genuineness of the transaction. 3, creditworthiness. The person who has given the money to you should be of sufficient means. He should be creditworthy. He should be in a position to extend this kind of a loan to you. A person working as a peon may draw a salary of 10,000. Obviously, he cannot give you a loan of rupees 10 lakhs. Forget 10, not even 5 lakhs. Therefore, creditworthiness. Identity, genuineness, creditworthiness. If you are not able to establish, supposing you have received an amount of rupees 10 lakhs, which you claim is a loan, and if you are not able to establish these three things simultaneously, identity, genuineness, creditworthiness, then the law presumes, deems the amount that you have received to be your income. The law presumes that the person from whom you have got the money is a conduit, is a media which you have found to get in your account your own money without paying tax. You are asking the government to believe that this amount which you have received from Mr. X, whose identity, genuineness or creditworthiness has not been established satisfactorily. You have not been able to establish one of the three things, not all the three things simultaneously. Any one of the three things you have not been able to establish is sufficient for the government to presume, to deem that the amount which you have received is your own amount. It is your income, deemed to be income. Pay tax on that. Hope that is clear. Deeming fiction, 68, section 68. 56, which is the part of your syllabus. If you receive an amount without consideration or for inadequate consideration, without consideration is gift. The word used is not gift, but then it means gift. If you receive an amount without consideration, they have specified sources, relatives from whom you may receive a gift, that is amount without consideration. Please don't use the word gift. It is generally referred to as gift, but it is in the section referred to as 56 states as amount received without consideration. So if you receive an amount from specified relatives, not friends, that to specified relatives, not all relatives are covered in specified relatives. So if you receive an amount from specified relatives, that amount will be considered to be not an income. But if you receive an amount from others, meaning from other than specified relatives, maybe from your friend or maybe from one of your relatives who doesn't appear in the list of specified relatives, then that amount which you have received without consideration will be considered, will be deemed, will be presumed to be income. 56. Deeming fiction. For example, you will clear the examination TY/BCom in the next year. One of your friends or one of your uncles who is not one of the specified relatives may give you a gift of rupees 50,000, amount received without consideration. For him, there is natural love and affection for you. For your uncle, he has natural love and affection for you. But that's not adequate consideration. Here, they are only stating that it should be received by you without consideration, meaning something in return. Natural love and affection is no basis for determining consideration. You haven't given anything to him for 50,000 rupees that you have received. So that amount which you receive without consideration. Now you may say it is a gift. Where is the question of income? But there is a deeming fiction. They have specified occasions also. On your marriage, you may get a gift. That's occasion of marriage. When you receive a gift on marriage, irrespective of the persons from whom you receive the gift, maybe your relatives, specified relatives, friends, business associates, they may give you a gift. But that gift is specifically exempt from tax. Occasion of marriage, they specified. I am not going into 56 now. These details we will see later. But I am only trying to explain to you as to what is a deemed income. When there is no component of income, it is deemed to be income. And income has to be understood in that fashion also. As I have explained to you, loan will be considered to be income. Coming to marriage, they don't specify first marriage or second marriage. So a person is at liberty to engage in maybe second or third marriage, keep on receiving gifts and keep on getting the exemption. This is only in a lighter vein to bring home the issue. Marriage gifts do not attract income tax. Gifts can be on marriage, can be in kind, it can be in cash. It doesn't attract income tax. Of course, now you have 269 ST section, capital ST, which invokes taxability. Of course, that is not a part of your syllabus. Bombay University hardly has any syllabus which could be considered formidable. 269 ST very recently introduced section where even marriage gifts will be brought to tax. That's a different question altogether. Of course, specified conditions have to be met in 269 ST for it to attract to tax. We are not going into those. So we have discussed non-incomes, deemed incomes and exempt incomes. Mind you, exempt incomes means you have received an amount. It is an income. Mind you, we have discussed non-income. We have discussed deemed incomes. Deemed incomes meaning something which is not an income. Law considers it to be income and imposes taxability, imposes tax on it. Non-income, not an income, no taxability. Not a case of exemption, mind you. Now I am discussing with you exemption. We will discuss exemption, specific section 10, exemption clauses of section 10 little later, maybe in the next class. I am only trying to discuss with you exemptions. Exemptions means exempt incomes. What it means is there are certain incomes, mind you, an amount that you have received meets the tests of income. It is qualifying to be income. The law knows it is income, but the law says we do not want to recover tax on that income. It is income, but non-taxable, exempt. Law has for the time being said that we will not want to recover tax on this income. It is an exempt income. Best example is, let us say your father may have Public Provident Fund account, PPF account. He may be depositing money in that PPF account, and at the end of the year the bank gives him interest. That interest on PPF account is tax free. After maybe 20 years, your father may withdraw the amount appearing in his Public Provident Fund account with the accumulated interest. He may get a sizable sum, let us say rupees 50 lakhs. Now he has invested maybe only rupees 35 lakhs. 15 lakh rupees 15 is the interest component on 35 lakh rupees which he has deposited over the last 20 years. Say that 15, which is an income, government knows this is income. You are getting it through the bank. Government knows this 15 lakh rupees partakes the character of income. It is interest income. But the government says, okay, we don't want to recover tax on it. It is an exempt income. Entire amount of 50 lakh rupees. Really speaking, 15 is the income. But ATC is there. When you had invested, you got the deduction. I am not going into those details. ATC chapter 6 we will see later. For the time being, understand how much did you get? 50 lakhs. How much did you contribute? How much did your father contribute? 35 over last 20 years. 15 is the interest. The entire amount of 50 lakhs, which includes 15 interest, is exempt from tax. Similarly, life insurance policy maturity. Your father may have taken a life insurance policy. It may mature after 25 years or 20 years. He may get a sizable amount. That amount which he receives on maturity of policy is specifically exempt under section 10, one of the clauses of section 10. So an exempt income is basically an income. The law does not want to recover tax on that income. Therefore, the exemption is granted. If the exemption is withdrawn tomorrow, taxability would result. It will be chargeable to income tax. Exemption is there only for maybe specified under specified conditions or for specified period or whatever it is. Exemption means the income is not chargeable to tax. Agricultural income versus non-agricultural income. This is a very important thing. Agricultural income, I should tell you, the Income Tax Act that we are studying, Income Tax Act 1961, is levied, the income tax is levied by the central government, Delhi government. Central government under the constitution has the power to recover tax on income. On income other than agricultural income. Agricultural income in our country is not chargeable to central income tax. Delhi government cannot recover tax on agricultural income. Under the constitution, agricultural income taxability The power to tax agricultural income has been granted under the constitution to the state governments. So it depends on the states. Maharashtra state doesn't have agricultural income tax. Kerala has, Tamil Nadu has, West Bengal has. Tax on agricultural income, that's a state subject. Agricultural income tax will be levied and recovered both by the state governments. Gujarat doesn't have agricultural income tax, it depends the state. Not many states have been able to muster the courage to levy tax on agricultural income. You should know agriculture is a very, very delicate, is a very, very in a way difficult. They have a lot many difficulties. Agriculturists, farmers have lot many difficulties. Largely in our country agriculture is rain fed, it depends on the rain. Even today, when the contribution of agriculture to the GDP is less than 25%, it is less than 20% in fact. When the contribution of agriculture to the GDP has been less than 25%, more than 55% of the working population still depends on agriculture. Now with this COVID outbreak, only agricultural activities seem to be taking place. Manufacturing, industries, services are not functioning at all, hardly, except for medical services. So therefore you may find in this year 2021 maybe agriculture contributing more to the GDP as compared to what it was doing earlier. That's a different issue altogether. So agricultural income tax is largely a state subject. Only the state governments can recover tax on agricultural income. Central government cannot recover tax on agricultural income. But there is an important but here. But agricultural incomes will be included in the income of a person only to determine the rate of tax applicable on the other incomes of the person. Before I proceed, I should tell you there is slab rate of tax in our country. Individuals have slab rates of tax. 2.5 lakh rupees is the basic exemption. Basic exemption means, I am trying to explain to you slab rates. Basic exemption means up to 2.5 lakh rupees, 2,50,000 rupees. The government thinks that much amount is needed for a person to maintain himself and or his family. Meaning if there are 3 members in a family, let us say you, your parents, father and mother, all of you are working, let us say each of you has income of rupees, let us say 5 lakhs father's case, 4 lakhs mother's case, 3 lakh your case. Each of you will get an exemption of 2.5 lakh rupees. The amount over 2.5 lakh rupees only will be brought to tax. That's the basic exemption. But let us take a case where only your father is working. Your mother is not, your mother is a housewife. You are still not working. You are a student. And your father has an income of rupees 10 lakhs. He will still get an exemption of 2.5 lakh rupees only. That is available to each individual. In our country, we don't have family taxation. It is there in the US. There the family is a tax paying unit, unlike in India. Of course, we have HUF, that's a different issue. But family taxation and HUF taxation are 2 different things. So 2.5 lakh rupees is the basic exemption available to each person. I am trying to explain to you slab rates. over 2.5 lakh rupees up to 5 lakh rupees, the rate is 5%. The rate is 5%. So if you have an income of 5 lakh rupees, assuming, you will be paying 2.5 lakh is exempt. Over the balance 2.5 lakh, you will pay 5%. 2.5 lakh into 5%. 12,500 rupees. Income over 5 up to 10. If you have an income of, let us say, 10 lakh rupees. So income between 5 to 10, rate is 10%. Sorry, 20%. And income beyond 10, 30%. If you have an income of 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs, whatever it is, income over 10 lakh rupees will be brought to tax at 30%. Of course, now this is the rate. The three rates are given only for and only are applicable only up to assessment at 2021. Three rates are there for assessment at 2021. For the later years, Madam Nirmala Sitharaman has come out with several rates. Very difficult to recall the rates. Thanks that we have mechanical computation of tax liability. We can do it mechanically. It would be useless remembering those rates. We have maybe 6 rates in all. That's a different issue, of course, under different conditions. So, slab rates. So, what I am trying to explain to you is that we have slab rates in our country for individuals. I was trying to explain to you that agricultural income per se is not chargeable to tax, but agricultural income is included in the total income for the limited purpose of determining the applicable slab rate. In other words, what it means is, if you have both agricultural income and non-agricultural income, the methodology will be, you add both the incomes, agricultural plus non-agricultural. Let us say 10 non-agricultural, 5 agricultural, or 15 plus 5. 15 is non-agricultural, 5 is agricultural. 15 plus 5, 20. Determine tax on 20, assuming agricultural income is chargeable to tax. Determine tax on 20. Now you determine tax on agricultural income, which is 5, income is 5, plus basic exemption 2.5, 7.5. 5 plus 2.5, 7.5. Determine tax on 7.5. Determine tax on 20. Determine tax on 7.5. Tax on 20, let us say, is around 4 lakh rupees. Assume. So, from 4 lakh, you minus tax on 7.5. Tax on 7.5, let us say, is rupees 50,000. Assuming. So, 4 minus 50. 3.5 will be the tax on his non-agricultural component of the income. So, the agricultural income is included only to determine the tax rate, the slab rate applicable. Please understand, there is no tax on agricultural income. Only non-agricultural income will suffer income tax. So, if a person has both agricultural and non-agricultural incomes, he will be subjected to a higher slab rate of tax on his non-agricultural income. We have discussed deemed income, we have discussed agricultural, non-agricultural. Let us come to real income versus notional income. Real income is something which benefits you, by going into your pocket, you are enriched. It is available to you for the purposes of your application, for the purposes of your enjoyment. Real, something which is real. It comes into your bank account, it comes into your pocket by way of cash. You have an eligibility, a legal claim to receive. That's a real income as against notional income. Please understand, we have discussed deeming fiction of income. A deeming fiction of an income needs to be distinguished from notional income. Notional is the opposite of real. Notional meaning not real. Opposite of real. Notional income ought not to be confused with deemed incomes. In deemed income, you have an amount, you have received an amount, but the law treats that amount as an income when it is not an income otherwise. In general parlance, in general understanding, that amount is not income, but it may not satisfy certain conditions prescribed in the Act. Conditions are not satisfied, prescribed in the Act. Therefore, the law says this is considered to be your income. Deeming fiction. Amount is received, that is true. Compare this with a notional income. Notional, unreal, not real, fictitious, false, not real. Yet, in fact, there is no amount received. There is nothing received by you. It doesn't enrich you. There is nobody to give that amount to you, but yet the law presumes certain incomes. That is a case of notional income, not real income, fictitious income, unreal income. Best example of notional income is income from house property. If you have two or more than two self-occupied properties, mind you, there is a philosophy in notional income. Times have changed, but the philosophy has remained the same. Maybe in another, when you are earning, possibly the government will possibly change this law. Maybe. Because the law has to be embedded in the social requirements and social understanding. Let me explain to you. We are generally a poor country, a developing country. In our country, people do not have their own houses to stay. Most of us live in rented houses. You are aware, more than 90% of Mumbai lived in chawls 20-30 years back. Now many of us have our own houses, residential houses, ownership houses. With the onset of the societies and the easy bank loans and the magnanimous construction taking place, huge construction activities taking place, we are able to afford a house, own house. So the law says if you have two or more than two self-occupied houses. Now you may not be staying, you may have a house, let us say in Parel, and you may have another house in Virar or maybe near Pune. You go to that Pune house maybe sometime once in 2 months, 3 months time, as for the purpose of vacation. You haven't given that house on rent. You are occupying that house, Pune house, whenever you go to Pune. The law says, if that is the case, if we are maintaining two houses, when our population, general population, cannot even maintain one house, you are having two houses. Even when you are not letting out the Pune house, you are staying in Mumbai house, Parel house. The law says we will deem that you have received certain income, notional income. You have not received, the law is aware, the government is aware, you have not let it out. You are going there maybe once in 2-3 months, 3-4 times only you go in a year in your house, and you stay there as an outhouse, as a maybe farmhouse type of a thing. Yet the government says we assume that you have let out this premises. Nobody has given rent to you from Pune house. You haven't let out. There is no agreement. There is no registration, no agreement, no tenant. Yet the notional rent is considered to be existing. So real income versus notional income. You will be brought to tax based on that notional rent, even when you have not received the rent. So don't confuse real income, notional income, and deemed income. I think that understanding is clear to you. Notional versus real versus deeming fiction. You will appreciate, I have done this earlier. There is tax. Tax can only be recovered by specific legislation. If there is a law to recover tax, only then there will be tax in this on the income. If there is no law, no tax can be recovered. There is no tax by implication or by inference or by presumption or even by analogy, comparison, implication. So tax only by specific legislation. If the law has stated that there is a tax on this income, only then the government can recover tax. Only then the courts will allow the government to recover tax, not otherwise. There is no tax by implication, analogy. Analogy is comparison, inference or presumption. Tax can be recovered on two bases. One is residential status, which we have seen section 6. Residence based taxation, largely countries follow this kind of taxation. We also have origin based taxation. What is origin based taxation? It means that when an income